I was instantly hooked to the eerie, kind of weird, somehow happy, yet sad sounding tone and vibe of the track. Hello there and welcome to Soundgarden Week. This week we're going to be analyzing and doing everything related to Soundgarden, one of my favorite bands ever. And today we're going to be analyzing for the first time one of their songs. In this case, we're going to be rocking the fantastic track known as Black Hole Sun from the album Superunknown, one of the most popular tracks by the band. And believe it or not, I actually recorded my own take, which you can find somewhere in the description to this video. And I think I did an okay job, but it's up to you. You can give your own opinion, so click on that video if you are interested in singing that particular song. And also, I even shot the entirety of the process of me getting as close as possible when it comes to my recording or my take to the sound of the album. So if you're interested in seeing the technical aspect of the whole production cycle, there is also a video in the description. So, with that being said, let's get into the track. But before we go, if this is the first time on the channel, I welcome you because in here we analyze the music that we love from the perspective of an active musician and professional music producer using language that everybody can understand in a way to expand our knowledge when it comes to music production and songwriting, and of course music appreciation. So if this is your jam, let's rock and roll. Here we go. So here we go, Black Hole Sun by Soundgarden.
In my eyes, indisposed, in disguises no one knows. Hides the face, lies the snake in the sun. In my disgrace, boiling heat, summer stench. Neath the black, the sky looks dead. Call my name through Black hole sun, won't you come? Wash away the rain. Black hole sun, won't you come? Won't you come? Won't you come?
Sorry for interrupting, but you know the drill. First and foremost, I love this song so much. This is the song that actually introduced me to Soundgarden and Chris Cornell for that matter. And I was instantly hooked to the eerie, kind of weird, somehow happy, yet sad sounding tone and vibe of the track. And I don't know if that makes sense to you, because for me, this track actually opened my eyes to many more ways on how to write and produce music. I discovered this track when I was like around 15 or 14. I recently got my first guitar, and by listening to this song, I started to realize that I could do more with music other than just being heavy. You know what I mean? Because this track, even though it's not necessarily heavy hitting or evil sounding, if that makes sense to you, like metal, it has plenty of darkness in it, don't you think? One thing that we were discussing a few days ago here in the studio was that it's incredible that a song such as this one, which is kind of a little bit too out there, became such a massive hit back in the 90s when this song got released. Well, it's a sign of the times, I guess, because for something like this to become popular nowadays, I don't see it happening anytime soon. But I mentioned this because this track, one of the reasons why it feels weird, at least in my opinion, is because of how kind of ominous and kind of dark aura it projects to you, don't you think? It might be me, but it has that impression, and particularly due to the sound of the voice in combination with the guitar, because the guitar chords are kind of happy, but there is something off about him, and also his performance, it's not necessarily always hitting the perfect pitch. He's avoiding it in purpose in certain sections, and it makes it even more interesting to the ears. Once again, this is probably Soundgarden not necessarily at their best, but close to their best, in my opinion. Because great band, but also this track, even though it might be played to death, is one of those very few songs that I always let run once they pop in while listening to music. Let me know if you think the same way as I do. Now, let's keep playing this track because it's fantastic. And I want you to pay attention to many of the effects that are being used on Cornell's vocals. You'll see that there is a little bit of a repetition happening every time that he finishes a section or a phrase. And also pay attention to the sound of the snare and the kick drum. They sound massive. I will explain how and why later on. So let's continue. Here we go.
Stood a rain, cold and damp, still the warm wind, tired friend. Times are gone for honest men, and sometimes far too long for snakes. In my shoes, walking sleep, in my youth I pray to keep heaven send hell away. No one sings like you anymore. Black hole sun, won't you come wash away the rain? Black hole sun, won't you come? Won't you come? Black hole sun, won't you come? Wash away the rain. Black hole sun, won't you come? Won't you come? Won't you come? Won't you come? Won't you come?
So good, and sorry once again for interrupting, but wow, that whole passage with the instrumental section was fantastic. It's probably one of the first forays into, at least for me, into polyrhythmic time signatures. What do I mean by that? Pay attention to the whenever you play this track again, try to keep up with the tempo because bam 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 bam. They are playing a 4/4 and then a 5/4, allowing the song to have this particular thing that happens. I went a little bit nerdy on you, but it's super fun. And when I was doing some research to get prepared for this Soundgarden week, I read an article on which, or an interview on which I think the guitar player mentioned. Please remind me his name. He's a very good guitar player. You saw him playing around with the guitar fantastically. That they never thought of the time signature changes that are quite common in this album. They simply wrote the music and then they realized that they were doing all sorts of crazy stuff with the tempo. This track is the one that has the least amount of changes when compared to the rest of the album. But all in all, it's a fantastic idea. I love that. And it was one of the first times that I listened to something like that and it blew my head away. Now let's talk about the mix. Here we go. As usual, we got our favorite tool for the job, which is Decibel, which is, for those of you who are new to this concept, Decibel is a visual tool that we use to analyze music. And in here, in the first section, we got the frequency range analyzer, which is displaying to us how loud each of the frequencies that are part of the human hearing range were at their highest point. Sorry. So as you can see here, we got plenty of low end. It's kind of robust, it's very punchy, and that's one of the reasons why I ask you to pay attention to the sound of the drums. Because you see that the kick drum is super, super punchy. and even the snare as well. Both of them feel super. They're quite present in the mix, but in a way that feels natural. This is not overly pushed forward. It feels, how can I put it, organic for lack of a better term. But the energy projected is fantastic. And there is something funny that happens with drums in this album. I'm gonna show you with this example. Right now, I got this performance, and it sounds like this. Okay, and now I'm gonna apply the compressor, which is this guy you got in front of you. This is a recreation of an 1176 compressor, which is one that is very commonly used in the industry, and it's gonna provide a gigantic push in the energy that the drum kit is gonna produce. You'll see. How do you know this is on? When this thing is lit up. And also I'm gonna put a gigantic symbol like this one when it is on, okay? Here we go. As you saw, the drums, as soon as I inserted the compressor, got more exciting, and we got something similar to the sound of this album when it comes to the kick and the snare. Because by compressing, you bring up the energy of the room and the ambience, plus pushing the attack and the transient information of both instruments forward, thus giving you a super, super punchier sounding mix. Very cool, and it's very, very, very prominent in this album. Now, I also told you to pay attention to the sound of Chris Cornell's voice. The way that they mix it is quite interesting. When I did my cover that you should be able to see somewhere on the screen, I actually struggled with getting close to the sound of the vocals. Why? Because they are applying all sorts of effects to the vocals. The first one is delay. Let me show you with this example. Welcome to Logic Pro 11, the software I used to produce this song. You'll see that every single one of these are known as tracks, and they contain audio. And the audio will be seen over here in these sections, okay? Now, I'm gonna solo the sound of my vocals. This is how it sounds like.
In my eyes, in this post, in the skies as no one knows.
Pay attention to the little repetitions that happens right after I finish the phrases, okay?
In my eyes, in this post.
Now see what happens when I remove them.
In my eyes, in this post, in the skies as no one knows.
Could you hear them? Very cool, right? This was done by using something known as a tape delay. In this case, I am using this emulation of a fantastic hardware unit that sounds amazing. And as you can see, the effect is not necessarily quite present in the mix, but without it, the mix feels a little bit dry and not as intense. Get me? Also, the amount of reverb, which is what we use to produce ambience, is not as prominent in the sound of his vocals. It's kind of dry. But when I was mixing my own take, I realized that I needed to add a little bit of it, but not as much as I would usually do. Let me show you. Now, when it comes to the vocals again, I added a little bit of reverb, which is the sound that creates the sound of ambience, right? And it sounds like this. Once again, solo, but I'm gonna turn it off first, and then I'm gonna bring them in.
Hides the face, lies the snake, and the sun in my disgrace.
You see the little reverb tail, right? A little bit of extra, like a cloud surrounding the sound of the vocals. Very important, because if I remove them and the song's playing, you'll see what happens.
In my eyes, in this post, in the skies as no one knows. Hides the face.
It feels much more put together. And in this case, I used two different reverb circuits. The first one is this guy, which is creating a shorter delay or reverb, if I put it correctly, which adds a little bit more of a cohesive sound to the whole thing. And the second one is this guy, a plate reverb that creates a much more larger sound, and it's a little bit darker in tone. So you can see that the point is to create some form of sides and depth. So you see that the use for those effects is just to allow for the vocals to blend together with the rest of the mix. Now, during the choruses, there is also something else that happens that is quite cool, which is a double vocal. You know that the chorus has this particular vibe and kind of weird tone to it due to the fact that the vocals feel weird. There is something going on about them. And it is, well, the result of it being you actually are listening to two different takes for the vocals happening at the same time. This is known as doubling. Let me show you. Now, talking about the doubles, you see that I got here two tracks. Both of them are singing the chorus. See what happens. This is the main vocals.
Black hole sun, won't you come wash away the rain? Black holes.
Those are the doubles. You see how the song becomes bigger by simple nature, right? Right now, I'm gonna turn off the effects that I applied to it because they're very important. I'm gonna disclose them later. But the sound of my vocals by its own is like this, and then I'm gonna bring in the double.
Sun, black hole sun, won't you come to wash away the rain? Black hole sun, won't you come? Won't you come? Won't you come?
Feels much more broader, right? But there is also an extra element that I added to my take because I realized that the double vocal wasn't just enough. So I had to apply an extra element, which is known as a doubler effect, which in simple terms is creating duplicates of the sound, but one of them is pitched upwards, slightly detuned but upwards, and the other one is slightly tuned downwards. And both of them are summed together in conjunction with the dry signal, the original, and it gives you this effect. This is the effect that I refer to. It's known as a micro pitch. And in this case, we're using this particular effect, which is the micro shift, and it sounds like this. Right now it's off, but see what happens once I bring it in.
Black hole sun, won't you come to wash away the rain? Black hole sun, won't you come? Won't you come?
Makes the whole thing bigger, right? Very cool, right? Those are the tricks that we have to pull off in order to produce emotion in music, because it's not that the track has to be played like this live, because it's kind of difficult to pull it off. It's possible now, but it's extremely complex. But what you do when you're working on the board and mixing is trying to get as close as possible to the sound or to the experience of being in front of Soundgarden pulling off this fantastic track live. Okay, now coming back to the analyzer, you'll see here that we got plenty of cool, how can I put it? The proper representation of the instruments, and there is not that much of a high end. That's why I said cool, because I happen to be kind of sensitive to very high end or pointy sounding sounds, if that makes sense to you. And I love when a mix has that particularity, because it's bright enough for it to be kind of pristine sounding, kind of lively, but it's not ear piercing. And most of the energy is taking place, of course, in the mid-range, but it's interesting to see that we got plenty more energy on the lows rather than the highs. This is what is known as a warm sounding mix for those of you who are into the audiophile or are trying to get into the whole thing of understanding the lingo when it comes to describing music. Okay, now let's take a look at the second section of the analyzer, because this is obviously, for those of you who know this channel and have been following for a while, I love the concept of dynamic range, and this analyzer is going to be the one that is going to show it to us. This blue blob represents how loud the track has been throughout time, and this is known as dynamic range. Dynamic range is very important because when something is quiet, it feels more personal and how can I put it? Introvert, if that makes sense to you. But when something is louder, it feels extrovert and energetic and exciting. And you can see how it is important for music to have moments of less intensity So the moments of big intensity will hit harder, right? So this is what dynamic range is. And you can see here that the introduction is super quiet, but here is where the vocals kick in and the drums alongside the vocals, and bam, huge jump in volume. But that draws your attention in. Very cool. And you see that the verse is very similar in volume. Makes sense, but see what happens during the chorus. Black hole sun. There it is. Clearly. Because this gap is before the feel that brings us into the chorus. Super cool. And this push in volume makes the chorus feel more exciting and much more memorable. Then let's take a look at the second half of the track. You see that we go back to the volume or the intensity or the output of the first verse. Makes sense because there has to be some form of continuity, right? And then again, we go louder during the second chorus. But see what happens. We're progressively speaking, going louder and louder and louder. And this is the instrumental. But this is the beauty of this. Look, the increment in volume during the instrumental section is tiny. But it's enough for the instrumental section to feel more impactful and important. So cool. Let's finish off this track because this is a fantastic song. And yeah, we got at least another 2 minutes to enjoy. Here we go.
In my head, drown my fear, till you all just disappear. Black hole sun, won't you come, wash away the rain. Black hole sun, won't you come, won't you come. Black hole sun, won't you come, wash away the rain. Black hole sun, won't you come, won't you come. Won't you come. Won't you come. Won't you
Man, what a good song this is, don't you think? I love it. I love the creative use of effects, the consistency of the drumming, the beautiful performance on the vocals, the creative use of the electric guitar during the solos. Everything is fantastic about this track. The fact, once again, this is kind of weird sounding. It's not short. It kind of has everything that makes it unique. And yet it became a super hit. It's incredible. Once again, a sign of the times, I guess. But what a powerful, good sounding track. Soundgarden is one of the best rock bands ever. That's not even a question. And I think they deserve a little bit more fame than they already got. They're already popular, don't get me wrong, but they got more than the song. And especially Chris Cornell, because most people knows him by his efforts with Audioslave. Once again, it's also a great band, but it's a little bit more commercial. I prefer his work with Soundgarden over what he did with Audioslave. But that's just a matter of opinion, I guess. So please let me know what you think about that very statement, and also what you think about Black Hole Sun and Superunknown. Do you like this album? Do you think it's their best? Or which one would be your favorite? Could it be Bad Motorfinger? I don't know, I'm just asking. But please let me know in the comment section down below. Again, if you want to see me singing this track, you can do it by clicking on one of the links in the description to this video, but also you can take a look at the way that I mix this track also if you are interested in seeing a little bit more of the technical aspect of the whole production cycle. So Both of them in the description, and probably even one of those somewhere on the screen. As usual, if you like to support this channel, the best way to do it is by listening to music on Apple Music or Spotify, and also by following us on Instagram and X, because that's the best way for you to get in touch with us in a much more personal basis. Now, if this is your first time on the channel, also, we got a Discord that you can join so we can keep the conversation going. Now, as every single time that I meet you, I gotta remind you that you should never let anybody tell you what to dream about, and remember, I will see you when we see you.